In this video, we're going to talk about the deviations that I use. All right, but first off, I want to kind of show you that if you order my deviation flashcards, this is what kind of comes in the package. All right, so first off, I want to tell you that these are actually available as a downloadable PDF. My biggest seller as A1 Blackjack, I don't consider myself a company or anything, but my biggest seller is my basic strategy flashcards. And when I was asked to make those, I ran into some issues with sales tax restrictions and things like that, where I could only, I think, send up to a certain amount. And so to mitigate that, I just decided to make them a downloadable PDF for 3 reasons. 1, you get them immediately. 2, it cuts down on costs. And then 3, like I said, it kind of alleviates that those sales tax restrictions that are placed on me. So if you decide to order my deviation flashcards, which I think flashcards are one of the best ways to learn your deviations, this is what comes in the package. All right. So first off, the first thing that you should get is this. This is a list of the 30 deviations that I use. So if you want to pause the video and see these, you can, along with their explanations over here. So for example, let me just read off one of these. I'll pick, we'll go 14, for example. All right. So I think this is one I did earlier, just so you can kind of see how this is read. So here it says 9 verse 7. All right. And up here it says your hand, dealer's up card. So that's 9 versus 7. And it says hit, which is typically basic strategy, which we know, but then it says double at +3. So if that doesn't make sense to you, if anything over here on this side of the chart doesn't make any sense, on this side there's an explanation. So if I read this, it says 9 verse 7, normally a hit, deviate by doubling down at a true count of +3 or higher. So each one of these has a sentence that kind of explains what you need to do during that deviation in case it's not clear, whether you should hit or stand or whatever. All right. There's also the difference. One of the other questions I get a lot in terms of deviations is people will say, well, does that work for double deck, or does that work for 6 deck or for 4 deck or whatever? And that's not the right question. The question is, should it be for an S17 game, or when a dealer stands on a soft 17, or an H17 game when the dealer hits on a soft 17? So you'll see that some of these, when it has the S17 and H17 columns, there are 2 different decisions, all right? So again, if I go kind of down by where that other one was, let's take, for example, 10 versus a dealer's ace is typically going to be a hit. However, you're going to double down, and then the first column is for S17. You're going to double down when the count is a +4 or higher for the true count. And then a 10 versus an ace is normally a hit, but a double down at +3 or higher in an an H17 game. So S17, it's at +4, H17, it's at +3. Some of those are pretty close to each other. Some of them are a little bit further apart. Like there is one on here, which I find very interesting, and that is a 16 versus a dealer's ace. In an S17 game, you should actually stand at a +9, which is the most rare one. I think everything else is within 5, give or take, of 0. But this one's +9, and then at an H17 game, it's at a +3. Okay, and so I showed on this that it's very rare. In fact, the deviations for most of these cards, which we're going to talk about next, the first decision that you will see, if there are multiple like that, is for the S17, because that's better. However, in that one single case, since +9 is so rare, I decided to put the +3 as the main one. But most of them are S17 first. However, I should say the majority of these, you're going to do the same thing, whether it's S17 or H17. So if there is a difference, let's find one here. There is a explanation. Let's see, here we go. This one, a soft 18 versus a dealer's 2. So this one is slightly different, whether it's an S17 game or an H17 game. I think the difference is at 0 itself. In an S17 game, you normally stand, whereas in an H17 game, you normally double down at 0, right? And then at whether it's a positive or a negative running count is when you would deviate to the other decisions on that one. Okay, now this is the back of the cards. On the front, what you'll see is each one of these has 9 get the right number out here, 9 different cards for you. And I only put 9 on a sheet because these are almost the exact same size as a playing card. All right, so I took this right out of the discard tray that I use all the time, and you can see if I were to line up 9 of these, it would fit almost perfectly. So I do that for the reason if you want to like cut these out and put them into a playing card case, you can do that to just keep them with you because I'm not obviously sending you cases to use. I figure most people maybe have a discard tray with cards in them, so you might have some empty boxes that you could put these in. All right, otherwise, I want to show you that since there are, I think, 10 of these sheets, that is 90 different decisions. And I actually shouldn't say different because every single row on these is the exact same decision, but I want to give you a different look, right? So for example, let's use this one. Here we have a soft 15 versus a dealer's 4. Actually, you know what? Let's use the soft 15s. There's only 2 ways that you can do it, you know, like 4 ace, ace 4, and then 4 ace. Again, I had to repeat that one. But for the more interesting ones, like here we go. For like this one, if we have a 16 versus a dealer's 9, all right, I could go like this and say, you know, 6 king versus 9. I could do J6 versus a 9, or I could do like 9 7 versus a 9. This is also a 16. So in each case, trying to get you to be able to recognize that all of those are 16s against a dealer's 9. And on the back, you'll see that they have the same exact explanations on the backside of flashcards. All right, let's talk about the backside of flashcards for a little bit so that you can understand how to use these if you don't like the charts, which I'd probably mainly use the flashcards myself. So if you can't quite see this, I might put it on the screen for you. But let's talk about this one, a 16 versus a dealer's 9. The way that you read this is the top decision is what you would normally do for basic strategy. All right, so a 16 versus a 9 is normally a hit. Now this is, of course, if surrender is not available to you. It says that at the bottom you should surrender if possible. But 16 versus a 9 is normally a hit. However, the middle, the big one, the big decision here is the deviation. So I would read this as 16 versus 9 is normally a hit. You deviate by standing at a true count of +4 or higher. Okay, let's pick another one. I'll use a different card here. Let's get a different decision that we would do. Here, how about a pair of 10s versus a dealer's 6, all right? So some APs decide to split 10s, some don't. In this case, we are going to. So if I have 2 10 value cards versus a dealer's 6, I would normally stand. However, we're going to deviate by splitting at a true count of +4 or higher. And that's the same thing that this phrase, all these have a phrase beneath them that kind of explains it. So it says normally stand, split at a TC or true count of +4 or higher. Right now there are some of these that are dependent on not the true count, but a running count. Like if I go back to this page with the 16s, this one, of course, 16 versus 10, the second most common deviation after insurance, or I should say most profitable deviation. A 16 versus 10 is normally a hit, but we're going to stand at, and it says 0 with an arrow pointing up. What that means, anytime you see an arrow on here, it's going to talk about the running count. All right, so as, again, the phrase beneath says normally a hit, stand at any positive running count. So if you see something with an arrow, that's what it's talking about. The count, either above or below that number, typically it's 0, is calling for the running count, not the true count. Otherwise, if you see something with a TC, that stands for true count. All right, so when you get these, you do, of course, have to cut them out. So I want to show you kind of how I do that, and then I'll be right back with you here at the end. All right, so I got those all cut up, and as I mentioned earlier, there are 90 of these different cards because each one has 3. We get all 3 of these ones. 3 of each different type of decision, and so of course 90 divided by 3 is 30, and these are my top 30 deviations, and this chart has all 30 of those listed out. So it's most of the illustrious 18. I think there's a couple like 13 versus 3 didn't quite make the cut because they found that that's, you play that a lot in negative counts, and as a beginner, of course, you want to learn more of your positive count deviations. So a lot of these are going to be more profitable decisions, like this one, for example, a pair of 10s versus a dealer 6. You want to split those. Of course, these are all the same. You want to split those at a true count of +4 or higher, right? I also want to just go over one other thing here, and that is the 4 different types of cards that you're going to see in these. And that is one, of course, that has I'll do it in the order that makes most sense to me: a hit, a stand, a double down, and a split. All right. And so each of these are kind of the 4 main deviations, along with, of course, just having those on there, the words. There's also some different colors and shapes to help you out. For example, we have a green rectangle, green for kind of go or like hit is how I think of that. A stop sign looking thing, a red stop sign for stand, right? 2 bars that are split, kind of double down. If you were to stack those on each other, they would double down. I don't know, that makes most sense to me. And then split, similar, but a little bit different. If you have a whole circle, it splits into 2 halves. So those might also help you kind of remember those different decisions as you learn your deviations, all right? Additionally, this is the last thing now, and that is, along with the chart, also included, these 3 columns are the exact same. This is kind of this first chart, just blank, right? So if you want to cut this up and practice a few different times, or you can make some copies of this, you can print out, of course, as many of these as you'd like. You can write in there, right? What are the deviations for, let's pick one here, for a soft 19 versus a dealer's 4. What would you do in that situation, all right? And then you can hopefully realize that a soft 19 versus a dealer's 4 is normally a stand, but you would double down at a true count of +3 or higher. And then after you get those filled out, you can come back and look at your chart, and yes, all right, a soft 19 versus a 4 is a stand, and double at a soft 3, or soft at a true count of 3 or higher. Now, I will say that there are more deviations. I have a friend who knows, I think 93 is what he told me. And you could definitely learn those if you want to. They're out there. If you have a Blackjack apprenticeship membership, you can find most of those on there. However, there is a point of diminishing returns, okay? I would say, I think Colin Jones from Blackjack Apprenticeship has said that the top 20 or so account for around 90% of all the profit you would get if you knew all the deviations. And it's really not worth the brain power to learn the other, like my friend, the other 70 or so deviations just to add 10% or so. However, I have 30 because there are a few more that are just pretty easy to know, all right? For example, we split 10s like this one was. We split 10s, which is at the bottom here. 10 versus 6, 10 versus 5, 10 versus 4 at a 4, 5, and 6 true count. Those are the exact same index numbers as soft 20s. A soft 20 versus a 6, versus a 5, and versus a 4 are also not split, but doubled down against a dealer's 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so if you know your splits, you might also know those 3. So all of a sudden, those are 3 more deviations that are pretty easy to remember. And if you don't like splitting 10s, you might be okay with doubling down your soft 20s. You can maybe generate less heat based off of those decisions. So it's kind of up to you as to which ones you want to know or not. You don't have to know all 30 of these, but if you do decide to purchase these, you get not only the 90 different flashcards, you get the charts and the phrases, along with the practice blanks that you can print out as many copies of those as you want. All right. So if you would like to purchase these deviations that I use, the link to my store is available in the description of this video down below. And this is going to be an option. I think I call it just A1 Blackjack's Deviations on there. So go ahead and click on that if you want to buy that. And until next time, this is A1 Blackjack.